So Skankfest happened this past weekend in Vegas, and it looked pretty fun. Well, Tim Dillon, Luis J. Gomez, and Nick had to do their thing and went in on Brendan Schaub. Now, I thought it was pretty interesting and a little bit different because even though they are making fun of Brendan Schaub, they actually talked about why people like to hate on Brendan Schaub. And Luis J. Gomez was asked directly if he himself personally dislikes Brendan Schaub, and the answer was pretty shocking. Lewis also called out Tim Dillon for going easy on Brendan Schaub back when he released the Gringo Poppy, and it was pretty funny. So let's take a look. And before we continue, if you guys can please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a ton, and we are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so all this tragic stuff happens, and then the most tragic thing that happened in April was Brendan Schaub releases Gringo Poppy on April 28th, 2022.
I don't understand the Brendan Schaub hate, right? Because, I mean, obviously I understand it. But, like,
Right.
but everybody's doing it now? You know what I mean?
It's people are very angry.
Well, it's like, because comedians are all, like, emotionally stunted people.
Yes.
And it's like...
Right, here's a reality. Brendan has a legal right to do comedy.
Yes.
We live in America, and he is legally allowed to do stand-up comedy.
And that's a country I love.
And that's a country I love.
You know, so
Here's the thing. At this point, you can't try to protect yourself by saying that you don't get what all the hate is about, because everybody knows. Especially them, since Legion of Skanks is probably the podcast that trashes Brendan Schaub the most out of everybody out there. In my opinion, the reason why he has been getting a lot more hate recently is directly correlated to the growth of the fighter and the kid subreddit. Because if you are a comedian or somebody out there and you can successfully make fun of Brendan Schaub, and somebody shares that on the subreddit, you have a potential audience of 90,000 members that could watch your stuff and potentially subscribe to your content in the future.
And then he goes and he argues to the parent. It's like, who's watching that and is like, really thinking like, oh, I gotta tell this guy he's bad.
What if in 10 years he becomes the greatest comedian to ever? Like, what if he starts with Carlin level, Pryor, brilliant?
I don't know if he can ever get to Carlton level. Yeah.
Fundamentals first.
That was the point of this book, because they're saying, so, you know, I'm obsessed with comedy. So yesterday I probably watched 8 comedy specials and watched all this YouTube stuff and read this book. So what they're saying is, so let's say you like Jerry Seinfeld, right? Well, who inspired Jerry Seinfeld? That's going to explain all about Jerry Seinfeld. Well, who inspired, let's say, George Carlin, if he's a George Carlin. Let's say, who inspired him?
George Carlin.
George Carlin. Who inspired him?
As funny as that sounds, there is a possibility that Brendan Schaub becomes a way better comic 10 years from now. Now, I'm not saying the best, but better. I mean, realistically speaking, he has been doing stand-up comedy for 5+ years, but the truth is he only started touring with his original material not too long ago, because clearly you'd be surprised his Showtime special was either written for him or had a lot of input from other people and other friends and comedians. But like him or not, he is hustling. You can't deny that. I mean, he is touring all over the country, doing stand-up comedy at different clubs. That seems like a lot of work. And so at some point, I would assume that you'd get better. So, but yeah, no shot he ever gets to Carlton level.
It's the button in the room that you're not supposed to push because we all want to get on Joe Rogan, and I just couldn't stop pushing that button. What do you want me to say, dude? If somebody says don't push that button, you're going to push that button, you know? And I watched it happen with him. I went on Tim Dillon show, and he just could not push that button.
I think we talked about it.
I know when Gringo Poppy came out, you were like, it stinks.
No, here's the deal, Brendan. He's a nice guy. He's genuinely a nice guy. Like, he's a nice guy.
Say nice guy one more time.
I've said it before. He is.
He said nice guy 7 times in a row.
So all these whole years of review thing was a trap.
He's not Richard Pryor. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think Rogan thinks he's the greatest comedian in the world either.
Luis J. Gomez essentially called out Tim Dillon for not going hard on Brendan Schaub when he dropped the Gringo Poppy back this year. And honestly, I thought he did. Obviously, he wasn't openly mean about it and just completely trashing his comedy, because at the end of the day, comedy is subjective. It's hard to, judge somebody's comedy, because technically if they tell a joke in a room and the people laugh, then they're doing their job and it's working. But I thought what he said was pretty fair compared to what everybody else was saying at that time. And also, he is way closer to Brendan Schaub than, the other guys are. So I can see him trying to hold back. Now, this part is very interesting because this is a commonly known thing among fans and comedians, but it is now barely being talked about in public, in podcasts, and by other comedians. And this is that Brendan Schaub, in fact, back in 2018 or a little bit before, he did have a lot of influence on who Joe Rogan would have on as a guest on the Joe Rogan Experience. He did that for Andrew Schultz and other people that I believe he did, but I don't have at the top of my mind right now. So going after Schaub was a sure way to never make it on the Joe Rogan podcast. And surprisingly, back then, Joe Rogan was very protective of Brendan Schaub over on YouTube and in person. This clearly brought us a situation with bent pixels and beige frequency that we all know about back a few years ago.
I want to take one last shot at Brendan Schaub.
Yeah, you have anything left to say?
And I mean this.
No, hold on. You guys woo that. You guys woo that. Do you hate him? I don't get it. No. He's just a Templeton.
It's just funny to make fun of him.
Okay, all right.
He has a good career of leaning into, there's a lot of really funny comedians that at this festival who no one's heard of who live in cars.
I go on the road and people come up to me and they're like, talk shit about Brendan Schaub.
The valet said that once I was getting in my car. He's like, don't let Brendan Schaub get away with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, what?
Dude, sometimes I'll be at the grocery store and the guy behind the counter will be like, dude, I'm a homeless cat. Meow. I'm like, what?
And Lewis is like, I'm just homeless.
No, I have no problem with Brendan Schaub at all. I met him once. I thought he was a nice guy. I think people don't like when you're, he's tall, good-looking, rich, and had a very easy path. You're not rooting for that guy. People like the underdog,
Now, this is a part that caught my attention because they made it very clear that at the end of the day, it's all fun and jokes. There is nothing personal and no grudges going on, which is what makes this whole thing fun and, easy to follow. But here's the thing. Again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. This is a perfect opportunity for Brendan Schaub to respond and get some extra views for the week. He clearly needs them. And look, this is an idea for Brendan Schaub to make a lot of money very easily, okay? Brendan Schaub on his new channel with 3,000 subscribers could literally just upload content, videos of him reacting to all the people that have made content about him, and he would have videos for days and days. Those would be easy views, and they would get views for sure. Unless he somehow screwed that up. But it's easy content and it's there. We'll see what happens, but what do you think? Because sometimes I think that Brendan Schaub really thinks that he is way better than all these other people that talk about him, because why only reply or answer to Dana White and Joe Rogan? I don't know, but if you made it this far, leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. It really helps out a ton. Dislike if you didn't like the video, but that is all we have for today. See ya.